What's up, guys? I am here to go over UFC Fight Night 233 or UFC Vegas 83, going down live from the UFC Apex tonight, December 9th. It's not the biggest card, doesn't have too awfully much name value on it, but no less, there are some pretty good fights going down tonight. So, the first fight of the night, Rayan Dos Santos versus Talita Alencar. Um, I just learned who both of these girls are. Both will be making their UFC debuts. Talita Alencar is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, a multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion in the black belt category. She's a world championships gold medalist, world championships silver medalist, three-time no-gi world championships gold medalist, Pan American championships gold medalist, and the list goes on. She has seriously got so many records or medals rather in jiu-jitsu competitions. She is 4-0-1 as a pro. Both of these girls made one appearance on the Contender Series. Dos Santos lost hers via unanimous decision, whereas Alencar battled to a draw in her most recent fight on September 19th. Dos Santos is 14-6. Alencar is 4-0-1. So Alencar may be a little bit outmatched, having literally 25% of the MMA fights that Dos Santos has. But just looking at Alencar's credentials in the jiu-jitsu department, that made me quite excited for this fight. The next fight of the night, second fight going down in the men's flyweight division, involves Tatsuro Taira, who battles Carlos Hernandez. Now, I'm very high on Tatsuro Taira. Let me just go to Carlos Hernandez's record. He's 9-2 as a pro. He's 2-1 in the UFC. Yeah, he's 9-1 in his last 10. He lost his pro debut. He's gone 9-1 since, and he's fighting a true prodigy in Tatsuro Taira. I am so high on Taira. The kid is only 23 years old. He'll be turning 24 next month. But he's 14-0 as a pro thus far. He's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is surprising because he's about as good of a grappler as most black belts as you see in the sport of MMA. He's 4-0 in the UFC with 2 submission wins, and he's just been nothing short of dominant since coming over with a record of 10-0 a year and a half ago in May of 2022. Yeah, Tatsuro Taira, I am about as high on him as I am Muhammad Mokaev. They are the 2 youngest undefeated prospects at flyweight. Let's see. Yeah, Taira's not even ranked yet. 4-0 in the UFC, and he's not even ranked. I don't want to hear shit about flyweight being a shallow division. Next up, Luana Santos and Stephanie Egger. That doesn't excite me too awfully much. Steve Garcia versus Malquanzale Costa. Now, Costa is the guy that has like the Scott Jorgensen disease, vitiligo. He's only the second fighter I've ever seen in the UFC with that skin condition. That's how I remember who that is. He's gone 1-1 in the promotion thus far. He made his debut against Thiago Moises, who, though isn't the best fighter in the world, is a very tough guy to make your debut against. He lost that fight and then won his next. Steve Garcia, on the other hand, is quite fun to watch. He is a knockout artist. He's 14-5 as a pro with 11 knockouts. He is 3-2 in the UFC with all 3 wins coming by knockout. He's the guy that knocked Chase Hooper out in 92 seconds about 14 months ago, 13 and a half months ago. And since then, he has added another knockout win to his resume. I'm excited to see that. Steve Garcia is a heavy-handed boxer. He's got some pretty good kicks to go along with it. He's not the best fighter in the world again, but tune into this one. You'll probably see a knockout. Hyun-Sung Park versus Shannon Ross. Forgive me while I look these 2 up again. Shannon Ross, I'm surprised is still in the UFC. So he's 13-8 as a pro. God damn it. He's 13-8 as a pro, and he lost his last 3 fights. His last win came in November of 2020. Since then, he made his Contender Series debut, getting knocked out at the end of round 2, and he has since gone 0-2. Both fights in the UFC, both fights lost by knockout. One in 59 seconds and one in 17 seconds. So I'm pretty sure, kind of like they did with Anshul Jubilee and Mike Breeden, they're trying to give Park a win, an easy win, just like they were trying to give Jubilee an easy win. Let's hope for Park's sake it doesn't backfire on them. But Park seems like a very solid prospect. He's 8-0. He won his road to the UFC tournament with a first-round rear naked choke. He got a first-round knockout on that show. And since then, he has gotten another rear naked choke submission, this one coming in round 3. So he's a solid prospect that I'm, after looking him up, excited to see. He, like Anshul Jubilee, is also 28 years old too. That's interesting. Headlining the preliminary card is Song Keenan versus Kevin Jousset. Now, Kevin Jousset impressed me in his UFC debut, where he picked up the only submission victory of his entire career. He's only 9-2. He made his UFC debut with a record of 8-2. He had 4 knockouts and 4 decisions. Picked up first round rear naked choke submission over Conor McGregor's teammate Kiefer Crosby. And Song Keenan, this guy was 15-4 when he came to the UFC. He lost 2 decisions, and he had gotten knocked out twice. The 2 guys that knocked him out are teammates, both former kickboxing champions, Israel Adesanya and Brad Riddell, which, when you think about it, makes you think this guy has jumped some divisions, because Adesanya has always been a middleweight. Riddell has always been a lightweight. There's literally 2 divisions, 35 pounds between the 2 divisions. But no less, he has been a welterweight since coming to the UFC. He went 4-1 through his first 5 promotional fights, only losing to Alex Morono, picking up 3 knockouts in those 4 wins. He then got knocked out by Max Griffin and Ian Gary. He almost knocked Ian Gary out too, mind you. He gave Ian his toughest test in the UFC thus far. And he comes into this fight off a win over Rolando Bedoya, which I didn't think he was going to win. Bedoya, again, kind of like I said about Moises earlier, isn't the best fighter, but I was impressed with him in his UFC debut, and Keenan beat him. Whereas Kevin Jousset, he's a very solid prospect. He's only lost twice. One was a split decision in a 5-round fight. The other came by doctor stoppage to Jack Della Maddalena. He's a very technical striker. This is going to be an interesting fight. Opening up the main card is Andre Muniz, one of the best grapplers in the sport, versus Jung Young Park. And Muniz is the only guy to ever submit Jacare Souza, who is one of the best grapplers in MMA history, 6th-degree black belt. That, man, it's so unfortunate he never got a title shot, because he really deserved one for a long time there before he just fell off a cliff because he got old as shit. But no less, Muniz had 2 appearances on the Contender Series, won both of them. He got his shot after his second Contender Series fight and went 5-0 through his first 5 fights in the promotion, before getting submitted by Brennan Allen and then stopped by Paul Craig in his last 2 fights. Whereas Jung Young Park came to the UFC with a record of 10-3. He got submitted by Anthony Hernandez, He got submitted by Anthony Hernandez in his debut before winning 3 straight decisions over Marc-Andre Barrios, John Phillips, and Tafon Njoku. He then got knocked out by Gregory Rodriguez before winning a controversial split decision against Eric Anders, which I wasn't too upset about, because I usually don't bitch about fighters, but Eric Anders has got to be one of the most boring talents I've ever seen in my life. If you've seen one of his fights, you've seen all of them, so I wasn't too upset to see him get robbed in that fight. Since then, however, Park has gone 3-0, so improving his win streak to 4 straight. All 3 wins coming via submission. All 3 wins coming via rear naked choke. So he has made some serious improvements. The guy also submitted Ray Cooper III earlier on in his career. He fought Shavkat Rakhmonov earlier on in his career. So he was getting high-level opponents really early on. And he beat Ray Cooper when he was only 4-3. Cooper was 11-3, and he submitted him in the first round. So do with that what you will. That opens up the main card. Then we got a flyweight ball, our third of the night, between Tim Elliott and Sumu Dodri. Now, Elliott, going into his last fight with Muhammad Makayev on October 21st, was 4-1 in his last five. He could have arguably been 5-0 in his last five because that only loss was to Matthias Nicolau, which I'm not going to say the decision was controversial, but it could have gone either way. It was a very close fight. And he lost to Makayev, who is as much of a prodigy as we have in the sport right now. And then Sumu Dodri, who is 16-5. He's still only 27 years old. He is an entire 3-4 inches taller than Elliott with a 6-inch reach advantage on him. All five of his losses are by submission, which, in my opinion, is a good thing because that means he just needs to tighten his grappling up and he could be a serious problem, especially in the flyweight division, standing 5'10". He's a knockout artist and he's very fun to watch. He's gone 3-2 in the UFC thus far. His last fight came against Matt Schnell, who he got submitted by at the end of round 2 with a triangle choke. He almost knocked Schnell out like 50 different times in that fight. It's one of the best fights I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. I'm super glad he took a year and a half off after that fight, though, because he's still very young. And yeah, he probably needed it after a war like that. I'm very, very excited for that fight. Our feature fight of the night comes between Jamie Mullarkey and Nasrat Haqparast. Pretty similar fighters. They have some common opponents. Mullarkey is 17-6. Haqparast is 15-5. Haqparast comes in on a 2-fight win streak, whereas Mullarkey comes in having gone 3-1 over his last 4. Our co-main event of the evening comes at light heavyweight between Anthony Smith and Khalil Rountree Jr. Khalil Rountree has had a bit of a career resurgence as of late. So, after getting knocked out by Johnny Walker in November of 2018, he started training at Tiger Muay Thai, where he came back and beat Eric Anders in one of the most one-sided fights we'll ever see. It was such a beautiful performance. Even though it went all 3 rounds, if you haven't seen that fight, go back and watch it. It's some of the most beautiful Muay Thai you'll ever see in MMA, literally. After that, he lost 2 straight, though. He got knocked out by Ian Kudelaba in the first round, and then he lost to Marcin Percino, who, if I'm not mistaken, was 0-3 in the UFC at that time. Yep. 0-3 in the UFC at that time, all 3 losses by knockout. Khalil was a huge favorite going into that fight, and he lost it. Since then, however, he's gone 4-0. He absolutely wrecked Modestas Bukauskas' leg with an oblique kick. One of the most violent endings to a fight you'll ever see. And in his next fight, he had another one of the most violent endings in a fight you'll ever see when he knocked out Carl Robertson. Man, that was just brutal how he finished him. Then he won a controversial split decision, but albeit won a decision over Dustin Jacoby before knocking out Chris Daukaus in Chris Daukaus' light heavyweight debut, improving him to 12-5 as a pro. Whereas Anthony Smith, he has had 2 very boring fights in his last 2 fights. Before that, he was 3-1 in his last 4, only lost to Magomed Ankalaev. He submitted Devin Clark, beat Jimmy Crute and Ryan Spann. After that 4-fight span, he lost a decision to Johnny Walker, then won a split decision over Ryan Spann. So he has 55 pro fights. Only 7 of them ever went the distance, including his last 2. And his last 2 wins are over Ryan Spann. So I feel like he's not as good as he once was, but him and Rountree should be a very intriguing matchup. I am really wondering how that's going to go. I feel like Khalil's going to beat him, but we shall see. That's the co-main event of the evening, and then in the main event we have Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. Song Yadong just turned 26 years old a week ago today. And that's really crazy to me that he's still this young too, because man, he's got so much time to keep getting better and he's already so good. He's one of those rare instances where he has a better UFC record than he has an MMA record. So he's 20-7 with a draw and 1 no contest as a pro. He's gone 9-2-1 in the UFC. He is 4-1 in his last 5 with 3 knockouts. His most recent fight coming over Ricky Simone, he knocked him out in the 5th round. And Ricky Simone is an absolute tank of a man. He's an absolute bruiser. And Yadong just dominated him. Whereas Chris Gutierrez also has a better UFC record than he has overall record. Not that he has a bad record. He's 20-5-2. But he too, no, he's gone 8-2-1 in the UFC thus far. Since losing his UFC debut, he's gone 8-1-1. Having a draw with Cody Durden, having a loss to Pedro Munoz. He's one of the most diverse kickers in the game. His leg kicks are just, man, he all kicks everybody. And I'm interested to see Song Yadong get around those kicks with his heavy hands, because Yadong has some good kicks too. Like, Yadong might be the hardest hitter in bantamweight history, to be honest with you. Like, he is such a forceful, brutal knockout artist. And I don't know if he's going to knock Gutierrez out. And I don't even know why they gave him Gutierrez, because Yadong is literally ranked at number 7 and Gutierrez is number 15. But considering how young Yadong is, I'm not too upset about it. This should be a good test for him. I do think he's going to win. But yeah, that is the last UFC card leading up to UFC 296 next weekend. And man, what a card we have next weekend. So all we got to do is get through this one. And we got, like Chael Sonnen said, 60% of the top 10 welterweights in the world competing, including a welterweight title fight between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about the fights tonight. And let me know how excited you are for next weekend's card. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.